how you're doing. Just wanted to show a bit more evidence and expand on part one, on what I believe partly caused the mud flood type burying of buildings that you see. I don't think this was the sole reason for the destruction, but I do believe it's the reason why we see all these half-buried buildings. In part one, largely concentrated on Portsmouth and Portland. That's kind of local to me. Nothing to do with World War II, by the way. That's a World War II bombing map. But yeah, I just wanted to go through a few more towns and cities across Europe, largely. If we start with Pisa in Italy. Pisa is a city and commune in Tuscany, central Italy. Most people obviously know it for the famous Leaning Tower of Pisa, which we will be touching upon, of course. So if you look now, the waterways and rivers have totally changed. If you look on the map on the left, the river used to fork off in two directions. Now it only forks off in one direction. If I take you down here, you can also see the old faint. This riverway still does actually exist and runs into the town. Again, if you look how straight this is, it proves these were man-made and carved into the landscape. They're way too straight to be natural. And that runs right away into the town. And if you come back down, you can see the second one. It's very, very faint. If I zoom in here, you can just about make it out. And it runs up to an old property. Or could it have been something else? Because Michelle Gibson touches upon this again, but by every single star fort or star citadel, you'll always find a running track type stadium very close by. It's something I've noticed as well. In every single village or star fort that I've looked up, there has been a stadium or running track so close by, and it's got to mean something. I do have a theory on it, but that's for another video. And yet the old riverway still exists and still follows up to a town called Lucca or Luca, I'm not sure how you pronounce it, on the right there. So if we take a trip into Pisa itself, I wanted to show you a few things that are very common in all these old star cities, and the evidence for mud flood, the evidence for buildings being built on top of old foundations, the red brick. The red brick is so significant because if these were just random unique cities, why is red brick in every single one of these star cities? Every single one that they're in. So here you go. Here's the facade that they usually put on top of the red brick, which is how they hide this stuff. And it's very obvious in Pisa that it's all starting to peel away, like in a lot of these towns and citadels. So that's another thing as well. So citadel is what these old star forts were called, where do you think the word, or how do you think the word citadel would be shortened down? It's got to be the origins for the word city, hasn't it? It's got to be. So we have the Leaning Tower of Pisa here, and if you noticed, it's right next to the river. If you watched my last video, I believe the mud flood evidence for buried buildings that we're seeing, I believe it's got something to do with water. And most of the towns and cities that I've looked at have all been near waterways, or there used to be waterways running through that town. So like I mentioned in my last video, imagine a scenario. Dams have been destroyed, waterways have been changed or directed in a different direction. When it flooded those towns or areas, and for example, say everyone had to be evacuated or they were killed off, whatever, when you came back to these towns 5-10 years later after this flooding, how would these villages, cities and towns look? Could they possibly be half buried in mud? And for the case here in Pisa, if that ground was however long it was underwater for and it softened and weakened the ground, could it cause the building structurally to be weakened and to lean? You just take a walk along the canal, which is on the right. You can just tell, I mean, it's looking a bit aged and falling apart now, but I mean, why are you building that on the edge of a river? And it fits in with the evidence I'm finding that I believe a lot of these star cities or citadels were hydraulically powered, so they were powered by water, and this is what the riverways essentially were for. Cassel, that is also in Italy. This is a map from 1681 or I-681. If you haven't looked into this, this is all about the 1,000 years being added on and how they've manipulated the calendar. And the more you look into it, the more evidence suggests that it is correct. So this is Cassel today. You still see little remnants. But I just wanted to show you here. There's a dam. So again, were these used in some way to flood the cities, towns or citadels? If I zoom in, there is a road built by the side of it, which seems to be another pattern, but you can tell that it's been straight cut again. But these were basically just the roads in the old world. As I mentioned before with Michelle Gibson, she touches on the canal networks, and this is just how they transported stuff around. So when these networks were destroyed or maybe redirected on purpose, where did all this water go? Just zoom into, I'm imagining they call it a fort, but water used to run around all these forts. And this is not the only the only one. This is absolutely everywhere. Here, red brick. But where did all this water go? And would it explain why we see lots of mud flooded buildings? If you look down here as well, so it looks like an old mini part of the village. It's just overgrowing. I'd love to know if anyone's got in there, so I can see it. It's just blocked off with that wall. It just looks like it's overgrown. Like you've got a bit of broken roof there. But what I'm getting at is this water must have gone somewhere. Where did it all go? I could say this isn't just the case in Cassel. This is almost every city or town around the world. So Regensburg. First thing I always look for is a dam system. There you go. If I try and explain a little bit of the evidence I'm finding for what these star citadels used to be. So if you look at that dam system there, it also flows down there. So I think what quite a lot of these dams are for is they are building up a certain amount of pressure. Whether they're still used today, I don't know. I can't imagine they wouldn't harness that energy somehow. And by building up that pressure, it would make the water flow in a certain direction, which it could then power whatever they powered off the water. If you look in Manchester in England, there is a clock tower that still actually runs off the water hydraulically, and my hunch is a lot of these, if not every city, was hydraulically powered. Manchester's hydraulic power system was a public hydraulic power system supplying energy across the city of Manchester via a system of high-pressure water pipes from 3 pumping stations from 1894 to 1972. The system, which provided a cleaner and more compact alternative to steam engines, was used to power workshop machinery, lifts, cranes, and a large number of cotton baling presses in warehouses, as it was particularly useful for processes that required intermittent power. It was used to wind Manchester Town Hall clock, pump the organ at Manchester Cathedral, and raise the safety curtain at Manchester Opera House in Quay Street. A large number of the lifts and baling presses that used the system had hydraulic packings manufactured by John Talent and Co. Limited. There was also one in London as well, a hydraulic system in London, but I just wanted to show you that just to show that there was and is working examples of this. Remember, this is Wikipedia. I question a lot of the dates there, and a lot of these stories that they come out with are just cover stories, when the likes of myself and others question them on these things. But it's just to prove that there was a working system. I'm pretty certain I've read that part of this still works as well. I wouldn't totally trust Wikipedia here, but...
Well, hang on, what is hydraulic power? Well, hydraulic power is usually a liquid under pressure pushed through pipes, and all that force is able to drive machinery. In the case of Manchester's system, it was water under pressure pushed through a network of pipes, and the sheer force and pressure involved was able to drive machinery in warehouses and factories. Now, Manchester wasn't the first place to do this. London and Hull were already doing it. The Manchester system though ran at higher pressure because some of the machines within the city centre needed that higher working pressure. Now the corporation were in the unique position because basically they could dig up the streets, they could build buildings and dig the necessary boreholes to get the water. And that's exactly what they did. And it was a very, very successful system. Canada House, Manchester, built in 1909, originally as a packing warehouse. And some of the hydraulic power generated by the network of buildings in Manchester powered some of the hoists and lifts in this building here.
So if we go back to Regensburg in Germany, and this is a print from 1715. What is that? But what I wanted to show you was the hydraulic system. Look at the water wheels that seem to be attached to the bridge. Very interesting, isn't it? I mean, were all the cities, it looks like a little sort of dam bit there. Some horses in the water. I don't know what that's all about, but it's a very, very interesting picture. I mean, if you had a situation where the old canals were the old roadways, and this was just the way that they used to get about, you would have things like that, like log boats with little houses built on, and it almost makes it accessible for all to be able to get around very, very cheaply. Is this what they had to destroy? Amongst many other things, of course. Peterwarden in Serbia. Thought I'd show it this way out. So rotate the map. And it's one of the more recognisable ones. It's quite old and decrepit, but you can see signs. That there's stuff underneath. It's all the red brick and all the facade I was talking about. So they just literally just put a layer of concrete, just smear a layer of concrete over the brickwork usually. There we go, this is part of the old system, no doubt. Let's take a walk down there. It's all old world. Lamps. You can tell all this stuff. All this stuff is no different to a lot of what you see all around the world. And if we zoom in again here, you can tell this is part of an old system. Again, it's buried there, you can just tell. and they just don't know what to do with it. And this is the case with quite a lot of these old forts. They're just turned into military nature reserves, whatever. You're not allowed on it for X amount of years while they destroy and cover stuff up. And then they're just clueless what to do with it, and they're just left like this in a derelict way until they can find an excuse to knock it down because it's an eyesore or whatever. This is how it works. Yeah, have a look in your country, town, city, because this is not unique at all to the places I'm just showing you. I'm just about to bring a map up now, just to give you an idea of some of the networks, these canals and rivers. I mean, look at this. This is Italy, I believe. Yeah, Alessandria. They just joined all these cities. I think it's a combination of just how they got around and how they powered everything. I mean, if you look at these, quite a lot of these do still exist, but quite a lot of them don't. And I say you just got to ask yourself, where did all that water go? And was it used in a way to flood and destroy these cities? Because the evidence would suggest so.